U.S. immigration authorities are set to reinstate the controversial policy of detaining families with children in immigration centres as part of a broader effort to deport undocumented immigrants, according to Tom Homan, the incoming Trump regime's border czar. Homan, known as the architect of the first Trump administration's widely criticised family separation policy, stated that the government would deport parents even if their children were U.S. citizens by birth. Parents would face the choice of leaving the country together as a family or remaining in the U.S. with their children, thereby splitting the family up. You knew you were in the country illegally and chose to have a child, so you put your family in that position, Homan said in an interview with the Washington Post. He indicated that the Immigration and Customs Enforcement would house detained families in soft-sided tent facilities. Homan emphasized the need for new detention facilities, explaining that the required capacity would depend on forthcoming data, which he did not have to hand. The Biden administration ended family detention in 2021, closing facilities criticized by advocates and pediatricians for harming children's well-being. Homan's plan to revive family detention aligns with President-elect Trump's pledge to deport an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants. While the policy aims to deport families together, U.S.-born children as citizens cannot legally be deported, placing the burden on parents to decide whether to leave their children behind. These facilities that Homan speaks of have been likened to internment camps or concentration camps in the United States, where the government forcibly incarcerated people of Japanese descent during World War II. The incarceration of Japanese Americans is considered to be one of the most egregious violations of American civil rights in the 20th century. President Roosevelt established the camps through executive order in response to the Pearl Harbor attacks. The camps were also known as relocation centers. Inmates lived in army-style barracks made of tar paper sides and shared facilities for eating and restrooms. During Donald Trump's first term, Homan, as acting director of ICE, was instrumental in implementing this zero-tolerance policy that led to the separation of 4,000 children from their parents at the border. He declined to specify a deportation target for the new administration, citing the need to assess ICE's resources. As border czar, a role that doesn't require Senate confirmation, Homan will not oversee ICE directly. Instead, the agency will report to Kristi Noem, Trump's nominee for Secretary of Homeland Security, pending her confirmation. Homan clarified that deportation operations would focus on individuals with criminal records and that law enforcement, not military personnel, would carry out arrests. The use of military support would be limited to logistical roles like transportation. Both Trump and Homan have claimed that immigrants are mostly criminals, drug dealers, rapists, and violent, creating a level of fear that contributed to the vote in the election in November. Of course, there is no data to back up these claims, with most violent crime in the U.S. committed by American-born white males. He also vowed to resume workside raids, halted under the Biden administration despite expected backlash from employers. Additionally, Homan supports reinstating Remain in Mexico, the policy which required asylum seekers to wait outside the U.S. while their claims were processed. On the issue of birthright citizenship, Trump has reiterated his desire to eliminate the constitutional guarantee that grants citizenship to anyone born in the United States, including children of undocumented immigrants. Remember, Trump claimed that Barack Obama was not born in the United States and used the same xenophobic rhetoric against Kamala Harris. Legal experts argue that such a move would likely be struck down in court due to the 14th Amendment. However, the conservative majority on the Supreme Court could influence the outcome. Long-standing precedent strongly supports birthright citizenship. The 14th Amendment, enacted in 1868 to overturn the Dred Scott decision, affirms that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Legal challenges to birthright citizenship would likely hinge on the interpretation of this language by the courts. Meanwhile, Donald Trump delivered a scathing Christmas Day message on his Truth Social platform, targeting Joe Biden's decision to commute the sentences of 37 federal death row inmates. After extending a mocking holiday greeting to his political opponents, whom he called radical left lunatics, Trump turned his ire towards Biden's clemency announcement. To the 37 most violent criminals who killed, raped, and plundered like virtually no one before them, but were just given incredibly a pardon by sleepy Joe Biden, I refuse to wish a Merry Christmas to those lucky souls, but instead will say, "Go to hell," Trump wrote. The authoritarian and wannabe dictator Donald Trump, a longtime supporter of capital punishment, was reacting to Biden's decision announced on Monday to reduce the death sentences of 37 out of 40 federal death row inmates to life imprisonment without parole. Biden's action came in response to pressure from activists who warned that these inmates would face execution if Donald Trump returned to the White House. Advocates have argued that Biden's move was necessary to prevent future abuses of the death penalty, while critics like Trump view it as a grave miscarriage of justice. During his first presidency, Trump resumed federal elections after a 17-year hiatus, overseeing more executions than the previous 10 presidents combined. This policy decision contrasts sharply with these recent commutations, which won praise from campaigners, including Martin Luther King III, the son of the late civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. Biden's commutation order affected a majority of people of color on federal death row, with 38% being black. Advocates hailed the move as a step towards addressing racial disparities and systemic issues within the justice system. Trump's advocacy for capital punishment stretches back decades. One of his early forays into public politics was a 1989 full-page newspaper advertisement calling for the reinstatement of the death penalty after the arrest of 5 black and Latino teenagers in the Central Park jogger case. The teens, later known as the Exonerated Five, were wrongly convicted of raping a jogger, only to be fully exonerated years later when DNA evidence confirmed the confession of another man. Despite their exoneration, Donald Trump has repeatedly and falsely claimed they admitted guilt, including during a 2020 presidential debate with Vice President Kamala Harris. The men, now in their 50s, sued Trump for defamation over his remarks. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.